Alrighty, you guys. Welcome back to another little video where today we are actually going to be taking a look at some benchmarks involved with the Dell Precision project. Now, these are going to be benchmarks from my personal Dell Precision project instead of the one that I had recommended. The performance might vary slightly, but not too much in most categories. So let's actually take a look at what I have compared to what you guys have, or what I recommended, I guess I should say. I have the R9 290 compared to the GTX 1063 gig. Now, the reason I recommend the 1063 gig is because it only takes one 6-pin power connector, which means you don't need to actually upgrade your power supply. And the 1063 gig is actually a little bit faster than the R9 290. The only time that it actually is slower is when you're essentially limited by VRAM. And as long as you aren't limited by VRAM, the GTX 1063 gig will simply be faster. On top of the just better architecture of the 1060, it also has NVIDIA optimizations, because most games are, well, better optimized for NVIDIA than AMD. But I digress. And now for CPU, I have the x5687, this is the x5677. Now the 77 is only 100 megahertz slower than the 87, so it really doesn't matter all too much. I simply have the 87 for my PC simply because I have the 87. But the 77 is what I will recommend and what I would probably say go with as long as you're like on a budget. The 77 is a great CPU. And especially when we compare it to something like the i7 2600. Now the i7 2600 is a very famous CPU, and you can see that it has been very well used. Now this is the user benchmarks page for it, and it actually says that the x5677 is 2% faster on average in effective speed than the i7 2600, which kind of surprises me. But I digress. Essentially, this thing is an i7 2600 equivalent comparison. So let's actually get into our first benchmark. It's a little game, you may have heard of it. It's called Valorant. Now, let me first and foremost by saying this might take a few minutes to explain, but this game was actually the inspiration for this PC build. I decided that I wanted to look at what I could do for a build for an option for just having something like an esports gaming rig. Now, most people aren't looking for the latest and greatest when it comes to a PC build. Now, what do I mean by that is essentially most PC gamers, now this was, I don't remember exactly where I saw the statistic, so I can't give you guys an exact representation, but essentially most PC gamers that are gamers simply have a computer that they can play their games on, where they just want to be able to play games with their friends. Now, I was a part of this demographic a very long time ago. I had an HD 7750, which is a woefully underpowered graphics cards by today's standards, but I had an HD 7750 that I used for 4.5 years. Now, and I played CSGO, Dota 2, some League of Legends, some Overwatch. I played a lot of games on a very, very modest PC, and that was kind of the I guess inspiration for this. It's not supposed to be super high spec, it's supposed to be cheap and effective, and, well, customizable too. So as you guys can see here, this is Valorant, running at 1080p medium settings, or the 1080p basic out-of-the-box settings. And it's running at over 100 FPS. Now, when we respawn or when we go through loading screens, we dip as low as 92 FPS, but we have a maximum of about 135, with an average sitting at about 105, which is not quite to the 144 Hz standard that I was hoping for, but still really not bad all things considered, especially when you think about it. This is a $15 CPU with a $100 graphics card in a $100 tower. This PC is the definition of, well, modest PC gaming. And that's the idea for it. Modest PC gaming for esports games. And besides the fact that I am utterly atrocious at Valorant, this PC can certainly hand it and can certainly be used for competitive gaming. It never dropped under 90 FPS, I can tell you that much. And so if you're on a 65 Hz or a 60 Hz or 75 Hz display, you will have no problem running this game at your refresh rate on your monitor. Unfortunately, you won't be able to utilize something like a 144 Hz display, at least with the current settings that I had. And at least for me, with an R9 290, a GTX 1060 might run significantly better. I personally don't know. I don't have a 1060 on hand to test, but like I said, this was a test done on my rig. But guys, esports games is not the only thing this PC can do, and I wanted to show that. So for the next benchmark, we're going to be looking at Borderlands 3. This is what I got for Borderlands 3. I got an average FPS of 73 with a frame time of 13.58. Now this was at 1080p low preset. Now you could adjust the settings to actually get better FPS, better frame time, with better visual qualities, but you would have to essentially be tweaking the system or tweaking around the settings to kind of see what would be best. Now, that's something you kind of have to do on your own. It kind of varies between PC to PC and the exact parts that you have. But guys, this was running Borderlands 3 at 1080p with 12 gigabytes of RAM on a $15 CPU. This was very, very usable. So let me just roll some benchmark footage for you. Alright guys, and please note that all of the stuttering that you're kind of seeing in the playback was actually due to the recording, not actually due to the game. It was much smoother on the screen when I was actually playing it than when I was recording it. But this is the benchmark at 1080p low settings while recording. Okay guys, and in conclusion, I think I made my point. This PC can do a whole heck of a lot more than just esports gaming, and if playing games like Valorant, CSGO, Dota 2, League of Legends, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, actually I already said Counter-Strike, you know what I mean. If playing those kinds of games are what you're interested in, this is such a good value for money PC. And it does have an upgrade path. If you were to, heaven forbid, decide to buy the x5690, you could drop it into this tower and still be getting good FPS. You could drop it into this tower and have a really decent gaming and streaming PC. You could take the 12 gigabytes of RAM and upgrade it to 24 and have a really, actually quite modest workstation, a quite modest streaming PC. Now, yet again, they aren't the greatest thing in the world for gaming, streaming, recording, doing all of that stuff, but it's very doable. Especially with the optimizations of if you were to decide to go for something like a GTX 1650 Super with the new NVENC encoder, the optimizations for that graphics card are really, really good, meaning that you can use the built-in NVENC encoder for gaming and streaming and have almost no impact on performance. There's just one little problem, though, that I do kind of have with newer graphics cards, and that's the new AMD graphics cards that also have really good optimization aren't able to be used on this older platform. The new RX 5500 XT, 5600 XT, 5700, and 5700 XT cannot be used on any legacy boot systems because they do not have legacy boot options. You can kind of use hackery options to get around it that are kind of janky, but that's why I'm going to be recommending NVIDIA graphics cards, because they still have legacy boot options. And yet again, there's a few other little things that come with using one of these older platforms that aren't the most ideal. But for value for money, these things are amazing. And I really do mean that. Having just a great gaming experience, or just having like a really good competitive gaming machine that is going to be really quiet and it's going to work for you, that's the kind of thing that I was looking for when building this PC. And feasibly being able to put everything together for under $350, that's pretty inexpensive, especially all things considered, especially with the prices as high as what they are now due to the COVID-19 crisis, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So, thank you very much for watching, you guys. I'm going to be getting this thing disassembled and into paint within this week, hoping that the snow holds out long enough so I could actually get some painting done. Yeah, by the way, Minnesota's been hit with a major snowstorm. So I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time getting a whole lot of stuff done for my videos. But, yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to try and have some more content coming out soon. But, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. I'll see you guys later. Peace.